Thank you for joining us today for IFMA's Asia Operations and Maintenance webinar. Tell us where you're tuning in from in the chat box. As we move through the discussion today, please post your questions in the chat, and the panel will answer as many questions as we can during Q&A. Questions remaining will be answered and emailed to attendees after the webinar. Today's distinguished panel is comprised of Dr. Jake Smithwick with the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Dr. Jake Smithwick is the principal investigator and moderator for today's panel. Jeffrey Young, Executive Director, Hong Kong and Macau, Work Dynamics JLL. Gonzalo Borteano, Head of Design, Solutions Development, Asia Pacific, Work Dynamics JLL. Kenneth Fu, IFMA Fellow, Executive Director, Hong Kong Land Limited. Graham Tier, IFMA Fellow, General Manager, District Facility Services, West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. Vincent Ma, Executive Director, Integrated Facility Services, Banking and Real Estate Segment, ISS Facility Services Limited. And Mahinder Singh, Director, IFMA India. Jake, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick, and thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it. We're very excited about this report. As you've probably seen in the advertisement and the announcement, this is the first report of its kind that's ever been published for this region. We're very excited to get this out there and spread the news about this particular results of the report and some of the lessons learned with this as well. So with that said here, we'll go ahead and jump into our agenda. We'll go through the benchmarking process and provide some background about what this is. We'll then dive into the facility demographics of our respondents for this particular study, and we'll spend some time going through the metrics of janitorial costs, maintenance costs, and utility cost. We'll close it out with a summary and, of course, question and answers. Now, I do want to remind you that as we go throughout today, be sure to post your questions, your comments into the chat box. We'll see that. We'll moderate the discussion. And let's do everything we can to have a very engaging and insightful discussion today. At this point in time, I'd like to turn it over for some words about why we're doing this study. And I will ask Jeffrey Young to please come in and talk to us about why benchmarking, why this study. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Hi, everyone. Nowadays, actually, the facility operation data is very important because we make use of the data to do the benchmarking and make the decision in some building refurbishment, system replacement, and operation and maintenance of facilities. There are many frequent asked questions by our client regarding cost saving and whether we operate a facility and building in an efficient way. Is that can we save the cost in something? So we rely on the data. The data for the benchmarking can tell whether we operate a facility in a more efficient or we can improve and can find a gap to do the improvement for the day-to-day facility management. So that's why it's very important for us to do. And we encourage the industry to do more and more this kind of exercise. So, right. And over back to you, Jack.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I'd also like to invite Graham Tier. Can you offer some thoughts about your perspective about why benchmarking is useful, why this report, and why at this point in time? Graham, could you offer us a few thoughts about why benchmarking has been so valuable to your organization and to where you see the future of this going?
Thanks very much, Jake. Yeah, look, it's great to see this report finally coming to fruition. I can recall, 3 years ago, we're talking about the questions and the data capture behind this report. There was a lot of people worked on gathering information about the Asia-PAC buildings and how best we should capture this information into research and benchmarking. And so to finally see the report delivered today is fantastic. Just to echo what Jeffrey said, as a client, we are always looking to make sure that our buildings are operating in the most efficient and effective manners, and that we can benchmark those operation costs against other facilities, similar facilities in our sector, such as performing arts or museums, etc. We want to be able to, really tell our key stakeholders, the boards, committees, etc., that yes, we are operating in the best range for these buildings, and we are competitive both from a cost and service perspective. So these reports are really, really important for us. And so I look forward to it. And I hope everyone enjoys reading the final result.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Graham, and thank you again, Jeffrey. So let's go ahead and dive into this. I see already some comments from Giselle and some others about how does this report get developed and what's the methodology behind it, and let's go ahead and dive into that. A little bit about our research team. I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. I also work with a team called Simplar. We do a lot of research on the facility benchmarking side of things related to procurement, project delivery, and all sorts of other areas related to facility management. We're very happy to work on this project, and we'll go ahead and dive into some of the metrics here. The first thing I want to talk about is what do the respondents look like? But before we do that, let's have a brief history lesson about where this report finally came to fruition. This has actually been, in some senses of the word, in the making for decades. IFMA had a report published in 2017 as their Operations and Benchmarking Report. To date, this has been one of the most widely purchased, widely disseminated reports that IFMA has about benchmarking performance data. It's focused on North America, but this report has been published every few years for 30 to 40 years and has continued to be used by a lot of facility professionals. 2018, we updated the report with some key metrics with that. After that, we developed another study that was focused on a global perspective of space planning and related benchmarks because of that. And then finally, just last year, we released the Global Salary Compensation Report. Together, this suite of reports has many ways influenced and directed what the new report from Asia has focused on in terms of benchmarks and different perspectives with that. And we're very pleased to go forward and talk about some of the details, the methodology with this report. Okay, so how do we put this report together? The first thing we did is that we reviewed questions from the previous benchmarking reports. We looked at the questions, we looked at the metric, we looked at how facility managers intended to use the data and modify the current survey that you see in Asia, the report that you're reading, to be what's most valuable. This was tested by various subject matter experts or SMEs, and based on that, that was sent to IFMA and non-IFMA members to collect their survey responses and to start developing the data. We had respondents from 8 countries, including Australia, China, Hong Kong, India, Philippines, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. In total, we had 280 responses received. We had actually more than 1,000 responses, about 1,100 altogether, but due to data cleansing and some inconsistency in some of the data, we had to cut down the total sample size, and this came down to about 280 responses for the set. Now, compared to some of the other reports, this is a little bit on the smaller side of things, but again, folks, I think this is extremely exciting. This is the very first time that IFMA has ever published a report of this nature for this region. So we're very excited about this. One minor note here, all the data is reported in US dollars. The reason why we did that is that most respondents said that they track their metrics in USD. You can convert this to your local currency. The data is provided in the report and the dates for which the currencies were calculated. So if you need to convert that to your local currencies, that's not a problem at all to do that. So in terms of respondents, 58% of the respondents were in the services sector. We had 27% in institutional. So institutional includes things like education, multi-site types of buildings. Services, on the other hand, the largest group here is think of like banking, financial, and other related services type sectors. And then lastly is manufacturing at 15%. In terms of the description of the respondents, a pretty even distribution. 40% of the respondents manage space within a building. 26% have a single building, and then more of campus type sites, multi-buildings, multi-sites, were the remainder, about 35% of the respondents. Now, in terms of the facility age, when you compare this metrics compared to the North American study, most of the buildings, about 30% of the respondents in our data set, are in that 5 to 10 years. So this is less than 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and so forth down the line. Most of facilities in North America are centered on this age range right around here, typically 26 to 50 years, whereas in Asia, much of the buildings, the data we have on, are substantially newer buildings, and therefore the types of challenges and different facility management practices we see is a lot different. Another part of this report looks at space management and what are the metrics in terms of how does a facility manager integrate with the space management side of things. So what this report shows is for those that manage a space within the building, do they lease it as a tenant, which is the dark blue? Do they own and occupy that space? Or lastly, do they own and lease it to others? We can see here for those that own multiple buildings in one location, so think of like a university campus as in one location, 21% of those lease it as a tenant, whereas 50% of those own it and lease it to somebody else. Now, when we think about square footage per occupant and especially space management, there's some very interesting things and trends we see here that when you compare it to the North American report, which is the largest report, the most comprehensive data set we have available, compared to the Asian report, there's some major differences. What this chart shows here is the percentiles of different age ranges, excuse me, space categorizations based on how much space is allocated per occupant of the facility. For Asia, on average, there's 277 square feet of interior space per building occupant. If you compare that to North America, that's about 70% less space per occupant compared to the North American study. So this is interesting because there's substantially smaller space allocated per respondents to the survey here. Because of that, this leads to some very interesting practices with regard to space management and how we deal with them. So with our esteemed panel here, I wanted to open up the questions. This first question will be directed towards Gonzalo. Space management is a challenge for a lot of facility managers, especially given, as we're all well aware, with COVID-19 and the various challenges we've had with that. Gonzalo, can you talk to us about what are some best practices that facility managers should think about as they effectively measure space, especially from a strategic perspective? Gonzalo, what are your thoughts about this?
Thanks, Jake. I think both the confirmation that the gap actually in regards to the individual footprint in the US portfolio, Americas portfolio versus Asia Pacific portfolio, it's already giving us an indication that the behaviors and the practices of the FM professionals have to be slightly different. But this is also now accelerated with the fact that after COVID, we're all working on a very hybrid mode, and look at us around where none of us are working from the office right here right now, particularly in places like Hong Kong. So ultimately, that adds a different equation and changes a little bit the I guess the balance of what is the usage of the office compared to how it is in places where everybody has a desk. For instance, in Asia Pacific, we moved already a few years ago into a much more activity-based working. That means that very few people and very few organizations are still sticking to the one person, one desk policy. So the minute you remove that ownership of the desk, you have to also consider other policies, such as, for instance, a clean desk policy, so that everybody can feel free to use whichever space they find suitable on every day of their time in the office. So that means also that the FM practice has to cope with the times, and that has to also evolve and to make sure that this clean desk policy is applicable. And for instance, if we look at our own portfolio in JLL in Asia Pacific, we've completely transformed the footprint, moving from a 1-to-1 desk share ratio to a 1.3. This is a very significant change in the mindset as well, and that also means that we're moving more and more into how to make sure that we get people back into the office in a way that they feel comfortable in any part of the space, that they feel safe, and also that has a very important implication for the FM professionals. For instance, the idea of the floor ambassador or the community manager is very much something that we're considering for all of our projects and all of our clients at the moment in Asia Pacific. So it's an evolution of the FM professional role. It's something that many organizations are not only considering, but they're basically using this as a foundation for the new ways of working and for how they will plan to attract people back into the office. And again, we're talking about the hybrid ways of working, and this has a particular impact in the FM professionals, in particularly how they manage the space availability, because we're no longer considering the same rush hours. There might be peaks and there might be moments where the office is less utilized. So managing that space availability through the right technology is a very important aspect. But at the same time, with COVID still lingering, we still have to have some degree of restrictions in the number of users in the meeting rooms, on the collaborative spaces. So all that is the role of the FM professional that has a direct implication in how people use the office. So arranging flexible schedules, again, it's not going to be the same HVAC usage depending on the time of the day, but now it's a little bit more complicated to understand what are the flows of people, because we have choice, and that choice goes from working from home, working from the office, or working from a third place. So that is creating a new dynamic, and certainly with the fact that our offices in general in Asia Pacific are much more densely occupied, or potentially more densely occupied, with as I said, as many as 30% more or even 50% more people than the desks that are available at any given time.
Sure.
That's those are the buffers that we need to also consider. So it's a lot going on, and certainly it's a very interesting time at this moment for the space management, for the FM professionals, working together also with design professionals to cater for those new needs of the new ways of working. So yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gonzalo, I really like what you pointed out, the fact that working is a lot different nowadays. As a facility professional, the way we work has certainly changed rapidly over the past 12 to 18 months, 24 months, and that's certainly a big impact of that. Jeffrey, can you offer some brief thoughts here about your perspective about space management and some other practical insights that a facility manager might have when they look at this? Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, nowadays we are facing different challenge regarding agile workplace. Traditionally, we working in a traditional workplace, one a cubicle by the people occupied by designated desk. But we are talking about agile workplace, mean a flexible workplace, no designated desk. So we have several case study and successful to help our client to change the floor size. Say, for example, from 20,000 square footage to 10,000 square footage. Some of them just like dramatically reduce the floor size. Just only we help the client to apply the agile workplace. So now many people and FM professional and some organization, they make use of the technology to allow their staff, their employee, not required working in the office, but everywhere. So that's why we deal the footprints. So we have successful case in here as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeffrey. And again, thank you, Gonzalo, for your comments about that. Space managers are a challenge, and as facility managers, there's some really unique things, whether it's agile, flexible workspace, that we need to be aware of here. Let's switch gears here for a minute, and let's talk about sustainable operations and maintenance and some things we need to think about from that perspective. When you go through this report, think about the way we use benchmarking is, how do my peers compare, and how am I running my facility? And the way you use these reports is that you can look at what the industry is looking at. And if you find that your facility operates different from the industry, this is a way to help you make those business cases of, we need to change the way we're doing things. And so when we talk about sustainability or janitorial or maintenance practices, that's the perspective I encourage you to have here in terms of, where am I at and where is the industry at, and how can I help my organization advance towards best practices that we're seeing in the industry. The report covers green certification of buildings. So we asked respondents, does your building have no green elements? Does it have plans for certification, some certification? We have several, or one or more buildings that are actually green certified. This breaks it down by industry sector, also by facility use, and by location as well. The report looks at recycling programs. So this presents data about the types of recycling programs that are in place. So if you find yourself that your particular facility doesn't have, let's say, a paper recycling program or plastic or batteries, this might be something to look at. We see that more than almost half the respondents have some of these programs here. And so if you find that your facility doesn't do this, this might be a nice way to show that we're advancing our efforts in this area. Half of our respondents, our peers, do this as well, so it might be beneficial for us to do this as well. The report also provides data about janitorial practices with regard to green cleaning. So we have percentages about how often people do things. The report also provides data about the cost impacts of implementing green cleaning programs based on the type of facility, the size of that facility, the sector and location of that facility as well. So we provide metrics, but we also provide different demographic factors you can look at based on the type of facility that you might be interested in here. Briefly, I want to turn the time over to Kenneth for a minute here, is in thinking about sustainability programs. What sustainability programs are important for FMs throughout Asia? Are there any specific programs that we should be aware of that folks should be thinking about implementing within their particular facilities here? Kenneth, do you want to kick us off here and have a brief discussion about this?
Yes. I think currently, basically, a lot of FMers now, sustainability become a key component of what you need to do nowadays. I think a lot of your CFOs or CEOs are asking you now to actually look at sustainable program for whatever, for your buildings or for your office space and things like that. I think throughout the because we do have buildings across Asia, I think in Singapore they talk about green mark. In other countries like China, we talk about LEEDs, and also the 2-star and 3-star. In Hong Kong, we got Hong Kong Beam. It's been there for a long time. But having said that, I think buildings been green, but a lot of our clients and customers and probably in the office environment and retail environment nowadays, they're asking for a lot of information to be green. The other one is the latest one that you need to know about and quickly up to be interested in is actually science-based targets. I think this is new in the market, but it's getting more prominent nowadays with especially with COP has actually been announced in Paris recently. I think what we need to do, I think we need to understand green, but it's also bring FMers to the forefront. I think this is important for all of you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kenneth. Vincent, can I ask you your perspective about why do facility professionals need to be aware of these sustainability programs? Like, what's the practical implication of this? Vincent, what are your thoughts?
All right, friends. I think that it's no doubt about the importance of sustainability. As a professional FM, we are also the housekeeper to manage and monitor, especially talking about the utilities. And we all know that utility consumption is also playing a very important part of the sustainability development. So as I mentioned, we also need to plan and keep a very close eye on the whole picture. So not just only the daily utility consumption, but also some more plan and program. For example, some soft side, some hard surface. Talking about if in view of the you just share with us the benchmark report, you can see there are lots of different activity we can do. For example, the paper recycling, waste management. For hard surface, of course, most of them we all understand that HVAC, the central plant system, also playing a very major part in the overall energy consumption. So I think to work closely with the end user and then to develop the whole sustainability program, and then we can get a lot of different cost saving and different support to the green activity would be very important for FM.
Fantastic.
Thank
Yes, thank you, Vincent. Thank you. You know, I really like what Vincent you said about the fact that as facility professionals, we're kind of the champions of some of these sustainability programs. Like, without our efforts to do these things, it's hard for our organizations to actually advance on these fronts here. So again, being aware of what those practices are with regard to sustainability is a key part of what we do. And these benchmark reports helps us know actually what our peers are doing. From a metric standpoint, you can understand what does the industry actually look like that. So again, Vincent, thank you so much for that. And Kenneth as well. We appreciate your comments. Let's switch gears here for a minute. Did somebody else have a comment?
Yeah, sorry, Jake. Just before we move off sustainability,
yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
Some of the other emerging trends that we're seeing is the this move towards ESG at a global level, and we're seeing that typically coming out of North America now, very strongly out of Europe, and we're starting to see it come into Asia. We're starting to see things like sustainability-linked loans. We saw some of the property developers come out and announce that this week, actually. And also things, emerging trends here in Asia, as we've set the carbon neutral 2050 target. This is a huge, huge challenge for FM professionals in the region, along with things like waste to landfill charges, which are being implemented at the moment by government. So there's a lot of pressure, and earlier Kenneth and also Vincent mentioned things like utilities and other service costs, which are all linked to sustainability and all linked to our carbon footprint. So there's a lot of things happening at the moment, and this is going to become a really, really important area in the very near future, actually.
Absolutely. And Graham, I think it's really quite exciting here, the fact that we have this report for Asia that highlights some of the very first looks we have with regard to sustainability programs, right? That's the first time we have this data, and that's why this report, I think, is so valuable here, right? So let's talk about janitorial maintenance and utility costs for a minute. This segues nice into that. Let's go through some of the actual cost per, this would be, again, US dollars per square foot. Again, the reason why we present these in square foot is because that's how most respondents actually provided their data. But you can certainly convert this to square meters if you need to do so. So what this does here provides the janitorial cost per square foot. You'll see that for Asia for 2021, which is when this data was collected last year, the average cost for this is $1.29 per square foot for janitorial cost. Compare that to in North America, a couple of years ago, the cost was $2.17 per square foot. So when you look at these differences here, there's certainly a difference between Asia and North America. The level of services and frankly the labor cost, I think, are different between these sectors, which also drives some of those metrics here. Now the report, when you look at what does the cost, what am I going to be paying per square foot or per square meter for my facility, the report that's provided will provide details on facility use. So whether you're a branch or a regional office, a community center, a school, headquarters, and so forth, it'll provide it based on the industry sector, the operating schedule. So in other words, do you operate 24/7? Do you operate 5 or 6 days a week? The location or country, and other demographic factors as well. So we present the overall numbers, which are very valuable, but we also break it down by different types of sectors that are available based on where your location might be. I mentioned earlier that we have data about green certification and janitorial cost. So we look at the cost of facilities, and based on their green certification, what is the cost per square foot for this as well? We also break this down by other metrics as well. We look at janitorial costs in-house versus contracted. If you're looking to contract out your janitorial services, for example, we have metrics and data available that looks at where the differences in cost of doing that in-house versus contracted out. It's also broken down by different demographic factors as well. The number of operating days per week, when primary cleaning hours are done, is it before the facility opens up or is it during the middle of the day? And also the cost based on the number of recycling programs you have. That can certainly have an impact on recycling and different costs related to that as well. So that's the janitorial side of things when we think about it from that perspective. When we think about maintenance costs, the maintenance costs are presented in terms of usable or rentable square feet. So cost dollars per square foot. The costs are broken down by different criteria. We have external building maintenance costs. We have interior maintenance costs. We also have other categories as well. Costs are presented in terms of roads and grounds, utility central system costs, process treatment, and then finally total cost. What the report provides is the average or the mean cost based on each one of these categories here. So here's external, here's the mean. Here's interior systems, here's the mean cost for that particular building. So again, this is very useful, especially from a benchmarking perspective, because you can look at what am I paying on average for my services and what do similar types of facilities also pay. And if you find that your costs are about the same as your industry peers, that's not a bad thing, right? It's good to be in line with the industry norms are. If you find yourself that your costs are substantially higher, we want to start asking ourselves questions about why are my metrics so much different from everybody else? It's either because we have perhaps a higher standard of care in our facility, or perhaps there's opportunities for efficiency that we need to look at. You see, one of the main benefits of benchmarking is allows us to know what types of questions we need to ask ourselves, what types of things we need to advocate for our executives or decision makers, and where we can look at to start finding those answers. Another part of the study looks at maintenance tracking of Asia versus North America. So what this report looks at is, how do facility managers track their maintenance programs? Do they use BIM, do they use CAFM, CMMS, and different types of systems? And I compared that to North America from a couple of years ago here. Now, what's interesting here is that almost half, more than half, of the facility respondents of our data set here use literally a pen and paper sheet or Microsoft Excel to track their maintenance programs. And we see those similar trends in North America as well. What this tells us here is that I'm not saying that using Excel is a bad thing. In fact, I use Excel all the time myself here, right? But if we're thinking about a strategic, data-driven perspective when it comes to facility management, I think there's certainly opportunities that we can advance and use technology to help us improve how we're delivering maintenance services, and especially tracking where our costs going, where the frequencies of various maintenance tasks, and to look at what our peers are doing with that as well. So this provides some data about the size of the facility and what types of programs are being used to manage that data. Finally, one of the big parts of this report, this is probably, I would say this is probably the most common question we get, the benchmarks, is what does staffing need to look like at my facility, especially by different types of maintenance functions. So when I talk about maintenance functions, what I mean is plumbers, carpenters, electricians, generalists, different types of maintenance personnel, and how many people do I need on my site to service my facility. So what this table does, I'm just showing the plumbers table here, but what this shows is, based on the size of the facility, how many FTEs or full-time equivalents do we have allocated for that facility size? So we have the number of people, we have what percentage of those people are in-house versus contracted out, the number of shifts per day we have, and then the number of days per week these people are working. Now, I will tell you here that this data is really difficult to collect. And if you responded to our survey when we collected this data, please, thank you so much. I mean, honestly, I know it's a tremendous amount of work to put this data together here, and we really appreciate it. The value behind this then is that you can start looking at maintenance staffing profiles. If you're in a position to look at how many people do we need to hire here, this report has metrics about what that needs to look like for your type of facility. So it's a very powerful tool. There are holes in the data just because it's very difficult for us to collect this here. But again here, folks, I mean, this is extremely exciting to have this type of data, this level of detail for this market here. Now, let's not beat around the bush here. Finding people to do our jobs, to do technical work, has been extremely difficult. Here in North America, in construction, facility management, it is really hard to find people in the trades and the technical workforce to do a lot of the works here, right? I want to open the question up here. We'll start off with Graham. What have you seen in terms of staffing challenges that has worked well to alleviate these concerns? What things are you seeing, and what have you done to alleviate or address some of the concerns with regards to staffing? Graham, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure, Jake. Let me just start by saying I really love this section of the report. It gives us so much information as facilities managers that we can use to improve our operations and our efficiencies and effectiveness. If you just take the janitorial services, you can see the cost of US janitorial services on a cost per square foot, and you can see why they're applying technology and more advanced cleaning techniques to the buildings in order to reduce their cleaning costs. So I think we can draw a lot of conclusions from this section of the report. Regarding the question on the maintenance and the skill set, now staff turnover in an organisation has a number of impacts, whether it be our own internal staff turnover or the client staff turnover or the service provider staff turnover. They both have an impact. And the impact is the knowledge transfer, the knowledge lost from the organisation, and the relationships that are built through this partnership of strategic outsourcing or whatever it may be. and that impacts the service delivery. So the challenge at the moment is that the economy is such that the wages are a key factor in driving employee retention, unfortunately, but and that is having an impact on our retention rates for the service providers as such. It's a competitive market, and as a result of that competitiveness, employees are basically not as stable in that area. So for things like janitorial cleaning services, maintenance services, we find that there is some churn in the service provider level. And I think it would be good to hear from the actual service providers what they're doing to address that sort of churn, to improve client satisfaction on those contracts.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jeffrey, do you want to talk to us a little bit about, from your perspective, staffing, different functions within your company? What are you doing on your side of things to address some of these staffing challenges? Any thoughts from your side of things?
I think the staffing nowadays actually in Hong Kong always being a problem because of the shortage of people, particularly for this period of time during the pandemic situation. Many companies they need to disinfection and draw a little bit many of the frontline staff. So staffing always be a problem at the moment, and because of the aging of the people as well. So like all the industry, particularly difficult now at the moment for staffing.
Absolutely. Mahinder, I want to call you out especially. We have a good number of respondents from India that responded to our survey here, which is just fantastic. I know a lot of folks really worked to get folks to respond to our survey. What are you seeing from your perspective about staffing, finding people to fill in these positions? What have you seen that we should be aware of as we look at this? Mahinder, go ahead.
In the last couple of years, the education in this area is increasingly, getting popular. And from where we see people from the soft services side or the technical side, from the engineering background, or from the hotels where people used to be picked up, there's an increasing amount of people who are looking at courses from IFMA and a couple of other perspectives to become professionals in this area. And I see a lot of takers there. And as a matter of fact, India is to produce, from the benchmarking side on education in FM, India is to provide, probably 1.8 years, one single student in 1.8 years, and one CFM student in 1.3 years. I see that increasingly, getting popular, and we have close to 15 to 20 people graduating every month. In the past 3 years, we have around 3,500 people that took IFMA's qualifications across India, and that gives a large figure. But the gap is very wide, and I think in the days to come, it will get more popular. Just to add to the question that we have on popularity of how exactly this education is getting, affected in the Indian subcontinent, is that during the pandemic, not one IFMA qualified, credential holder has lost his job. So that is a populist figure when we look at how exactly education is getting, seeping into the system in the FM industry in India.
Absolutely. And that makes me think of IFMA's salary report that came out, I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago. We looked at the impacts of COVID-19 on the facility profession, and frankly, across the board, there is almost no impacts to staffing at facility professionals, which is really quite interesting, right? And it sounds like, Mahinder, you're seeing the same thing as well. Vincent, let me turn the time over to you for a minute. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing on your side of things about how do we address some of these staffing concerns? Vincent, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that recruitment challenge is a very common issue across the region, not just only in Hong Kong. But if talking about in Hong Kong, I think that as Graham also just mentioned about the turnover, I would like to share something. So actually, we can also think about the retention, and also how to develop our talent. So in view of the whole picture, sometimes maybe we also need to think about the source of the talent. The source of talent actually is coming from the university or the college. And so that's why I know that some institution, just like IFMA, of course, and some different local institution, they would promote a lot. And then to influence and, of course, sell the opportunity of FM as well as technical or engineering at the source. Of course, this is not a short-term solution, but for middle-term or long-term. And I do believe that this is one thing right now some institutions and some market leaders are also planning about it. How to influence and engage with some local university and college to convince the young talent after graduation or before their selection of the major, and then sooner or later, they will also choose FM or technical or engineering as their career development. This is one thing, the source. And the other thing is I just mentioned talent retention. Of course, different organizations, different companies have different plan. I know that. But the real thing is sometimes we also need to intensify our value proposition. In some research, some other external party, external specialists, I got that the employee, the staff, when they change their job, sometimes more than half, it's not about the money. Money is just only maybe the short-term incentive to them, but the long-term development and also the value proposition and their understanding about what development they can achieve in the future. So this is the main point. So I do believe that for the staff retention, we always keep saying how to let them know the value proposition, and then to further develop the talent so that they can be equipped as a professional FM and, of course, technical and engineer. That's
absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Vince. I really like. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Jake,
is that Graham?
Can I just add to that? I think there's a good opportunity here to plug the IFMA Career of Choice platform because it really does support what's just been said both by Mahinda and also Vincent. You know, IFMA's created this whole skills matrix regarding FM as a career of choice, and they're working extensively within colleges and universities, and some of the programs are really helping attract young talent into our profession. And so I echo what the two of them have just said. And, you know, it just reinforces that the IFMA direction on training and development for the industry and also our support as not only practitioners, but also as service providers in promoting FM as a profession and career of choice is absolutely critical.
Yeah, fantastic. You know, Graham, it's a relevant comment here from somebody on our stream here, Julian, that says they would go out to community colleges and speak with HVAC students about their experiences in facility management and some of the positions that I have available here. And I mean, that's, Graham, your perspective on that and the work in India and elsewhere is really beneficial in terms of involving universities and younger folks into this career profession. Absolutely. Any other thoughts about this? Anybody? Okay. So we'll keep going here, but again, everybody, it'd be interesting. Why don't you post, if you're on LinkedIn with us right now or on YouTube, why don't you post some comments in the chat box about how do you find people in your function, in facility management? What have you done that works really well? Or maybe if you're looking to get in that position, what have you find well that attracts people to this field here? Everybody, I encourage you, add a comment about what attracts you to this field and how you can attract others to this field here. So go ahead and put those comments in there, and we'll read through some of these here after we get to the end of the presentation today. So staffing is a part of the benchmark report. The last major component of this is utility cost. So we go through utility cost based on industry sector. We look at the cost per square foot for main grid electricity. We have water costs, and we have total utility costs as well. This is broken up by sector, by green certification status, country, and central plant as well. Now, these costs here are presented in terms of gross square feet. And again, these are pretty valuable data as we look at this here. Now, when we look at the energy use index, this is another metric that could be valuable to our respondents here. We have a little bit of data. This is a bit limited, but we do have the electricity kilowatts per square foot. We also have the kilo BTUs per square foot. So if you are tracking energy usage, the EUIs here, these metrics can also be valuable for us here. Now, one question we have on our live stream here is post-COVID, and this will be for our panels here that has a perspective on this, but post-COVID, what focus is being placed on in interior air quality, and what are some things we can do to address some of that here? So let's dive into the technical side of things. This is related to our utilities perspective for a little bit here, but anybody on the panel, what has been done after our post-COVID world to deal with air quality and different things related to that? Do you have any panels to kind of address that question? Kenneth, why don't you go ahead and jump in?
I can.
Kenneth, go ahead.
I can actually mention that. I think indoor air quality now is quite important because everybody is worried about COVID and things like that. So I think what we have done so far, when Ashray posted the using what are filters you use for AHUs and what modernization you're using. In some buildings now, they put in UV sterilizer for the AHU to ensure that the indoor air quality is actually good to give surface at the moment. There's a lot of new technology out there that we can use. They got C-polar filters that we can use. Apart from that, but the other time is also transparency. All right, I think currently a lot of companies, what we're doing in our buildings now, we are trying to put indoor air quality, real-time indoor quality by putting quality sensors online. So I think a lot of the buildings and tenants are asking for now to know in terms of what indoor air quality you have. So we are in the midst at the moment. Technology available now with 5G now, you can actually track all these online with proper sensors. So I think if a lot of tenants are asking these questions now, especially during COVID times.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, what have you seen from your perspective? Thank you, Kenneth. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay. Well, now we are talking about the people. We care the people in the workplace because all the people now concerned about the hygiene after the pandemic situation of COVID. So yeah, I can see some client when they do decorate the workplace, they will install some technology like the IAQ sensor to monitor the indoor air quality, and I mean on every minute. They can see the situation, so the people understand the situation. And in case of there is some problem or there's some renovation, they all air quality going worse, so they can provide alarm and some action we need to take, but to improve or to adjust the air, the fresh air and something. So what I can say is nowadays the IAQ is one of the major topics we are talking about, particularly for the workplace.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jake, if I can just add to that, I think one of the things that we've noticed in our facilities, particularly during COVID, we've actually seen a huge decrease in utility costs. And the reason being is a lot of our venues have had to be closed as a result of measures to prevent the spread of COVID. However, in saying that, as the speakers have rightly pointed out, the reliance or I suppose the assurity in the systems, the building systems, whether it be the primary air units feeding the buildings or the air filtration systems, have become a lot more in focus. And so people are demanding indoor air quality checks. This whole wellness move has been accelerated to the forefront, not only on air conditioning, but also around hygiene and cleaning. cleaning standards, the deep sanitization, the coatings, the touchless systems. This has all been a big change. But on the utility side, what we've actually seen is we've seen a decrease due to our venues being closed. But on areas where we'd normally trim utility costs, such as shutting down PAUs after hours and things like that, we've had to really stop those practices during the pandemic period as such. And back to Kenneth's point, a lot of the newer buildings in Hong Kong are automatically fitted with the latest technologies such as UV treatments, etc., on the PAUs. So we don't have a lot of that issue with the newer buildings. It's really the older buildings where the issues are.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'd like to actually ask Gonzalo kind of an interesting question here. In your view, what is the importance of transparency when we think about some of the things that Graham has referred to in terms of how do we convince our populations that things are safe here? Any perspectives on the role of transparency and data when you think about space management, for example?
Absolutely, Jake. I think transparency is very important. We have touched upon the technology to understand what is the air quality in indoor spaces. But for me and for our clients, it's very important that their employees also have access to that data. We have some anecdotes, for instance, in our China offices and across the China portfolio, how employees brought their own air quality measures for them to feel safe and they have the right air quality indoors, because that is certainly an issue in China, but not only in China. So I think that's, and Graham alluded to that, it's an obligation in employees to consider this data transparency. So it's a measure and it's something that will help people get back into the office feeling safe and feeling that their demands are being looked after. So in this case, FM has an absolute great capacity to influence how this data can be shared. And obviously it's a management decision, but ultimately it reverts positively in employees going back to the office and being seen, that management is looking after their needs. And in this case, well-being is certainly one of the most important aspects in the return to the office post-COVID.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I really like that perspective of using data to convince our occupants that things are okay. Here's what we're actively doing to address some of these things here. Again, Gonzalo, Graham, I really appreciate perspectives on this. Kenneth, what are your thoughts on this? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think we sort of mentioned sustainability, and Graham mentioned about ESG before, right? So now, because of the ESG, a lot of tenants now are also going for WELL certification. It's also to do with work-life balance and lifestyle. So indoor air quality come into place at the moment. But also nowadays, I think most of us at the moment is trying to promote green fit out, because I think with indoor air quality, majority of the thing is how you fit out the building, the offices, the less use of sustainable material, less use of VOC, because that will add to all your indoor air quality, right? I think it's just education based, but I can see this trend going forward because with green financing, and a lot of the tenants are now asking for green certification before they lease a space, and a lot of the new generation, which is sort of wanting to know about how sustainable a company is before they join the company. This also relate to the talent pool that we have in the university, because nowadays they don't ask you how much you pay, what's the work-life balance, what's the sustainability focus. So I think it's something that FMers need to think about, because there's a new generation out there that thinks differently from what we do before.
Yes, yes. And Kenneth, that makes me think of a shameless plug. IFMA is currently conducting a pilot study on the role of succession planning specific to facility management. This is a global pilot study. We're looking at what is out there, what is being done, and what are some active things being done to address some of these workforce challenges that we're seeing within our career field. So again, thank you everybody so much for your comments so far about this particular topic. So to close out the report, some of the last components of the report, as we do have, excuse me, we have the total cost of operations. What this looks at, it combines the janitorial cost, the maintenance cost, and the utility cost, and presents that on a cost per square foot basis. So it's the average cost per square foot for our facilities here. This data is also presented by facility use, industry type, operating schedule, setting, age, and other factors as well. And again, you're looking at how does my facility compare to the average, to the industry. This report provides that to you, first one of its kind. So in summary here, to wrap all this up, here's some key considerations that if you were thinking about benchmarking or how do I get started with this, some things I wanted to offer, some insights that you can do basically today. The first thing I would suggest here is to start small. If you've never benchmarked your facility before, you're not really sure where to get started with this, just do something. If you've never done that before, this is a great way to go in here and offer perspectives about what you can actually do to get this started. The second thing I would say here is think about this idea of good, better, best. Good is collecting something, some sort of data, metrics, benchmarking is beneficial. A better approach is to look at, well, how do I look at on a year, or how do I look at compared to my peers, right? I have my data for this year. How do my peers look at for this year? And perhaps the best approach is to do this on an annual, regular basis comparing to your peers. Again, if you've never done benchmarking before, just start doing it. If you have done it, then this report allows us to have a better perspective, more in-depth perspective about what the industry looks like for this. The third thing I would suggest is that when you do effective business benchmarking, this leads to effective business cases. There's nothing more challenging to go up and ask for additional funding or additional resources when you have no data to back up those requests, right? So having the benchmarking data, you can show here's where we're at, here's where our peers are at, and there's a major gap between where we're looking at. Having this funding will allow us to be a more professional and more proficient organization and deliver better services for our customers. Having the data allows us to make better business cases for those that were trying to convince us something. And finally, the last thing I would say is that FMs need to become a data-driven function. And what I mean by that is that we just had a very long discussion about the fact that there's not enough people to do the work. We know that funding is always a challenge. And so because of that, having the quantitative data about what makes sense and what can actually help us operationalize or help us run our facilities more efficiently is a great way to get some of these things done. So in summary here, if you haven't added a comment here tonight, again, I encourage you folks, throw in your comments, throw in your perspectives. We would love to hear what questions and comments you have. We have a very highly esteemed panel here tonight that has a lot of expertise and insights that can help you out. If you'd like a copy of tonight's slides, please feel free to drop me an email, jake.smithwick@uncc.edu. I'd be glad to provide that. But at this point in time, I'll open up to our panel and take any final comments or thoughts. We'll start off with Mahinder. Any final thoughts or comments for our panelists here tonight, or anything else you want to offer for our discussion? Mahinder, go ahead.
Yeah, the benchmarking study that we have done is an extensive study, I think, and in the days to come, we require more and more people participating in this survey, not just about for India and the whole Asia-Pacific region. It gives a large perspective on operations and maintenance costs, and notwithstanding the requirement of education in this area and upskilling, that is what I think would be the next step that we would want to focus on.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mahinder. I want to turn this one over to Graham. We had another question come in here, and really for anybody here, but any career suggestions for facilities professionals with the trend of carbon management? This is something that's really come about, and I know, Graham, I think you alluded to this earlier here. What do you think about in terms of career perspectives and managing some of these sustainability or carbon management perspectives? Graham, can you talk to us a little bit about that? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so when you look at the IFMA credentials, you have the sustainability professional at the top, up with obviously the FMP and CFM. So you have IFMA has a credential around sustainability, and this covers things like carbon management. We're seeing a lot of changes and trends in carbon management, and obviously with carbon neutrality coming up in 2050 for us in Hong Kong and 2060 for China, this is a huge challenge. And we'll see more renewables, we'll see more trading of utilities and things like that. So I think it's a space to watch. I might, Jake, while I'm talking, I might just add my closing comments. First of all, it's been a pleasure to be part of this process. The questions that have been developed for this survey are outstanding. And back to your comment, if you're going to benchmark your facilities, don't waste your time developing your own questionnaires. The questionnaire that's been developed by IFMA is outstanding and is applicable to your facilities. And if you want to benchmark your facilities against your other peers or companies, use the same questionnaires and sit down together and work through those questions. There's been a lot of effort by the SMEs put into getting those questions together, and it's a really solid report covering the key fundamental areas of FM, the operations and maintenance, the utilities, right, and all these services. It really is a comprehensive study. So that would be my closing comments. And obviously I've read the report. I hope people enjoy reading the report. I want to thank the sponsors for their support on helping get this report out, and all the participants, those people that contributed building data freely to the report. So they're my closing comments as well, Jake.
Fantastic. Thank you, Graham. Kenneth, any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to share with us here?
Yes, I think I'm similar to Graham. I've been looking at his benchmarking for a long time. I think when I started as a young FMer, to get information in Asia for figures to convince your CFO or your bosses is very difficult, because Asia, I think people are quite close, not willing to release information. So I think kudos to all the people who is involved in this, because to get this 1,000 thing and 1,000 surveys and to get a 280, and this is the first benchmarking for Asia Pacific. I think apart from this, I think people will find it useful, and I will find it useful, and I think a lot of the young practitioners coming up will find it useful. But having said that, this is one item for benchmarking we do. The other thing you should also be looking at, I think it opened up to other range of benchmarking in Asia Pacific you could do, in terms of space management, in case of what customer wants, in terms of sustainability. So this is just a step, a foot into benchmarking, but I hope there's more to come, and IFMA can do that. I'd like to thank JLL for the sponsor. I think it's a good start.
Fantastic. Vincent, briefly, any thoughts or comments from you to wrap things up here?
Yeah. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, everyone. So I believe today's actually the sharing of the benchmark a very useful, as mentioned by some of the speakers. I do believe also nowadays we keep asking a lot of different data and more scientific data. And the benchmark tools actually is one of the good platform for us to benchmark with different sector, different user, so that we can know our position right now for different purpose. For example, we just also shared about some of the business case and some funding application or So for long term, I think FM professional will be more rely on the data, and also I will also emphasize again, even the COVID-19, or we name it as the new normal or post COVID-19, and actually it as and also give it some chance and opportunity to increase the use of technology and also the data. So this is one good takeaway from this post COVID-19. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Gonzalo, if you had one piece of wisdom for our audience today, based on your experiences, what might that be?
Well, the benchmark report results are really outstanding, and makes me think that, again, going back to the technology aspect, that coming from a design angle, which is what I'm representing here today, I think there's a lot of the new ways of working that can be addressed jointly with a design mindset and a FM mindset, because what we're trying to address is a new change of behaviors, a new set of priorities as to why people go to the office and what do they expect back in the office. And certainly we've touched upon air quality and the technology that show us how to measure that. And I think that's a conversation that certainly we should incorporate in our design world, and perhaps working more closely together in two disciplines that historically have not been together. So perhaps that is the biggest finding for me, and it's the encouragement that I have to certainly working closer with our colleagues and professionals around the FM industry moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gonzalo. And finally, Jeffrey, again, on behalf of IFMA and behalf of all our readers and audience today, we really appreciate your sponsorship of this report. Jeffrey, do you have any final thoughts or comments about what you'd like to offer here?
Yes, actually, it is our honor to be the sponsor for this IFMA benchmarking, and the report we're waiting for a long time in different kind of year. We're being asked by the client how to do how to operate the efficiency to improve the efficiency for the building. So with the report, we can tell, we can solve, and also to sort out a lot of problem facing, to demonstrate the priority. Now, the resources is sometimes limited. So we need, by using the benchmark report, we know how to prioritize our tasks. We understand that kind of prioritization as well. So again, yeah, it is our honor to be the sponsor, and all the speakers will set about the benchmark report very well.
Thank you. On behalf of IFMA and on behalf of all of us here today, we sincerely appreciate all of your time here today. Ashley, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.